Okay, what's the Wi-Fi? Pull up the Wi-Fi. Get the Wi-Fi. I tell you, even with Corona, he would have been safer at that school, because I'm going to kill him at the house. So you telling me they want you to do online school and they ain't gave you no Wi-Fi? Open your mouth and speak up where she can hear you. What do you mean, how do you divide? You divide it. You break it up. You divide it. This virtual learning is supposed to come off my Wi-Fi, or the school done send a Wi-Fi. Ask her. Don't ask me. I'm not your teacher. Ask her. She's sitting right there in front of you. Look on that computer and ask her. What does she say? Okay, then. You better not be playing with me about this Wi-Fi. Because I will. Hello? Hello. We are doing the virtual learning and we need some assistance, please. Is the school going to drop you off for lunch, or is that something I need to do too? Look at the computer and quit looking at me. Where's my cup at? Have you seen... Excuse me, Miss Williams. Say yes, ma'am. Miss Williams? Miss Williams, can you speak up just a little bit? We can't hear you. Speak up. He right here sitting at the computer. I should have sent him right on to that schoolhouse. No, you can't have none. Is it snack time in your class? Okay, do what you're supposed to do.
Hello and welcome back to another segment of Got School. Woo! Week 2 for me here at home. Got School is a forum created for parents like you and me that are looking to navigate this distance learning environment and get the resources we need to get through it. And I have to say that this week I'm a little bit more comfortable. The first week was a little rough, but welcome. Here you'll find the resources you need. We have educators who have non-linear approaches to education and have spent their lives learning how to help your students. And they are here and they have great resources. So today we're going to bring on Maria Mohammed. Welcome.
Hey there. How are you today?
Well, you know,
You made it.
I made it. I'm at the end of week 2 just here, and I have to say it was a little bumpy. But because of this community that we've created and your help and your assistance, I'm making it. And I have to say I couldn't have done it without this platform and the resources that we've gathered here. It's been invaluable to me and my family, and I'm hoping that other people are saying that same people and get a lot of great feedback.
I love the village that in the community that we're creating here, because we're definitely going to need each other working through these uncertain times, and things change daily. So we're definitely going to need someone to lean on other than ourselves. So this is a great format. Thank you so much for having me.
Right. So what I learned in this environment is the scheduling, right? I put this big board up at the top of the stairs. It's right outside the kids' room. I gave them all things they're supposed to do before they start the day and throughout the day. That really helped. And then I gave them some bonuses. I'm trying to make it as fun but educational. So I gave them a bonus to do where they can actually earn a little bread, a little money, made it relevant. You taught me that, make it a little relevant. So hope this week their goal is to pick a favorite person that they look up to, write about them, and then they get bonus points for doing extra. So if they do a video, they get some extra points. If they actually read it to their grandparents or someone in the family, they get some extra points. And we're going to monetize that for them.
That is an excellent idea. We need some incentives. We need some incentives, and we definitely need some monetization. Because
I have teenagers. Yeah, I have teenagers. They're not trying to hear anything else. But well, am I getting paid for this now? They're at that point, and they need that. They need to know that there is a payoff, and it's not always money. Right. But in this instance, that's mommy's way to motivate them.
Money talks, right?
Money talks, right?
Absolutely.
So Maria, what do you have for us this week? What are our top 3 takeaways from this week? And how are you doing? You're doing good. You look beautiful, by the way.
Thank you, my love. Just a reflection of you. So what this week has been challenging for us. We had loss in the family. And so one of my tips is definitely to prepare during this pandemic. We have to be prepared when unforeseen circumstances, things that we have no control over and they just pop up. And so we prepare with the mental health packet where mommy just can't today, but here's your packet. Here's everything that we've gone over, and go ahead and knock it out the park. And because we don't want to neglect our children's education, but we also don't want to neglect our own mental health. And sometimes you'll find that your children will need a mental health day as well. And we'll be like, hey, and we have to be flexible, especially with everything that's changing. If it's not a loss, then, it's the fires that are going on. And our children are being affected, and we want to produce resilient children, and we have to give them the tools in which to do so. So it's very important that we make mental health a part of everyday language. Say it one more time, love.
I have a question to that regard. So I had this challenge this week with one of my children who he was having that mental day. And my tendency is to push them out the door when they're doing that for school. So what do we do at home when they're just like, I don't want to get on the computer. I don't want my people to see me. And he just was like, no. So what are some of the tools when they're shutting down on the mental health side? Because I need that. I'm sure some other parents do too.
The number one thing is to listen to your children and let them feel like what they have to say matters, and let them feel and know that how they're feeling matters, and help them to understand that you get where they're coming from, and so empathy goes a long way. Sometimes they're going to need more breaks. You're as a parent, you should know your children well enough to know whether they're just trying to get over, or if they really need a mental health break, if they really need to decompress, if they really need to log off and disconnect. So I listen. It's sometimes, and my son, he gives me, you've met him, he gives me kickback on a regular because we raised him to advocate for himself. So he does give me, feedback on a regular, but I know when it's more than just his normal, smart mouth. I know that when it's like, okay, he needs a break. And so during that day, I give him more breaks. We don't do it, 45 minutes, maybe we'll do it 30 minutes. And I just kind of improvise and try to meet him halfway. But very rarely does he do, just doesn't do anything. But I definitely try to meet him halfway and kind of improvise with his schedule, because they're going through a lot. They're going through the same things that we're going through with less tools in their toolbox in which to really cope with them. So, yeah.
Great advice. Number two.
Number two is, if your child has a designated classroom, be mindful of how we set the classroom up. For one, we really want to stay away from where they sleep. We really want the bedroom to be exactly that, where you go to bed, right? And so a lot of times we want to set it up so they're secluded or off, so they are not distracted, but we really want to bring them out of that setting, because rest is very important, and we don't want to conflate the two things. So if you can, as much as you can possibly, bring them out of the bedroom, bring them into the dining room, take them outside. And for goodness sakes, please, if we can, do not have them facing the wall. I see a lot of, the little classroom set up, and they look so cute and they're wonderful, but the child is facing the wall. It's like, do you want to face a wall? Do we like working in cubicles? No. So if there's a window that we can, set their classroom up and so they can look, and kind of, we don't have to worry about them being distracted. They're at home. They're going to be distracted. So you might as well disavow yourself of the belief that they won't be distracted to begin with. So I think it's very important that we're conscious of how we're setting up their designated learning areas.
When you were saying that, I was thinking about they're on timeout. What they gotta think. So I don't put my kids on timeout, and they're too old for that. But I was imagining, are they on timeout at the wall? But yeah, I get it. Facing forward, facing into the living room or into the space so that they feel engaged, or out a window. Perfect. What's the number three?
And the last one, we want to make sure that each day we're asking our children how their day went. And a lot of times we don't do that because we're like, oh, we've been home with them all day. We know what their day was like. Well, you don't. You want to get it from their perspective. They're the best they're the best author of what kind of day they're going to have, right? We always go make it a great day. Well, then we also want to hear their perspective of how they think their day went. And you'd be surprised. I mean, I'm with my son every day, all day, but when we sit down at dinner or in another setting outside of the learning setting, it's like, hey, how did your day go? How did I do today? What's my rating? Was I 1, 10, 5? Like, you want to get them engaged and you want to give them a voice and you want to teach them very young how to advocate for themselves. So it's not just about what did you learn, but it's also about how did you feel? Were any acts of kindness? Did you feel like I was kind to you today or patient with you today or impatient? So these are the kind of things that you want to ask your children because how they feel about their learning is important and it really dictates what kind of learner they're going to be.
That's a really good tip because sometimes I forget that I taught them something. And so when they use it, right, I go, wait, oh yeah, I taught you that. Yeah. So something,
Right,
and
right.
as adults, especially my kids are really outspoken. You've met them, right? So they're kind of outspoken. And so when they're being a little bit more mature in their approach to things, I see adults are kind of put back by that. And sometimes I forget that I taught them to
Absolutely. It's
advocate for
like
themselves. So thanks
he's
for that
11.
reminder.
Yep, he's 11. And my mom says all the time, he has a whole conversation. He can hold a whole conversation, like a real conversation. I'm like, yes, mother, because we talk to him like he's, one of us. And so we have to remember sometimes, okay,
Right.
he's still 11. But absolutely, you definitely want to get their take on it and how they see this whole homeschooling because you'll be up in flights of fancy thinking that, you're 5-star and you're really 2.5, from their eyes. So it's very important that they have a say and a voice in their learning experience.
I'm going to take that one. I think I'm going to put that on the board. How did I do today? And we'll do like a little check-in that we can all talk about. I think that'll be a
Right.
really good tool.
Embrace yourself. It's
Well,
okay. This is a safe space.
yes, I graded myself. I think this last week I was lingering between a D and a B, and I think I'm about at a C this week.
Okay.
So yeah, I think
Okay.
about a
Well,
C. Yeah,
only
yeah,
way, only place to go but up, right? So just keep
exactly.
keep pressing on. Right.
Thank you so much, Maria, for all your wonderful tips as usual. We have
Absolutely.
some amazing guests coming up. And
I
tune
can't
in,
wait.
everybody. So I also want you guys to make sure that you look down at how to get a hold of us. We are going to be doing more of these. So if you have a nonlinear education program or education program that you want to present, please get a hold of us and look out for those resources at the bottom of the screen. We'll see you in a minute. Woo! Wow. That's one of my favorite videos. It's really time for a change in education. So we are going to bring all of our guests on. Our first guest is I'm calling her Dr. Paige because she is getting her PhD. Welcome, Dr. Paige.
Well, thank you. I love to hear that. And that helps me continue to visualize what my future is going to be. So I say it all the time. My husband, my kids call me Dr. Paige, but I'm still working on it. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, Dr. Paige, can you tell us, you responded to COVID-19 and you actually created a program to help parents. Let's hear about that.
So, first of all, just a little background. I work with an organization called Heart Math Tutoring. That is my full-time job. And so when COVID started, we as an organization had to make this huge pivot because we do one-on-one tutoring within the school district. And so we had to figure out how are we going to keep doing this, in this new environment. So very quickly, the organization was able to do what everybody is talking about, and that's pivot and take this online. In the meantime, just personally listening to my children. I also have teenagers and some younger kids, maybe the middle school age, hearing them talk about how they wanted to get involved. Because of course, while COVID is going on, we have the social unrest and they want to get involved. And so I am now currently working on developing a curriculum called a Framework Forward, which will be to help guide students. We call them Gen Z now, or that's what my son is calling himself, but in that age range, what I call organize, catalyze, and mobilize so that they learn. We watch them on TikTok, like do something amazing. And so I thought, wow, what if they were really like taught how to organize that in a manner that they can impact social change? So that's what it's all about in the nutshell.
Woo, well, thank you for being able to pivot, right? As a resilient leader, you were just like, okay, we got to pivot, and having the bag of resources at your hand, it's really important, right? So the next person we're going to bring on, her name is Simone Bess. Welcome, Simone. Hello, Simone. Welcome to Got School. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So you and your group also did the same. You saw this need, this gap, and you took a different approach. Can you tell us a brief summary about how that happened and how you came together to create this resource, the resources you created?
So this resource has actually been in existence for 4 years. So sitting in a university setting, College of Engineering, it became very clear to me that there was no intention to support, work with, collaborate with young people that look like me. So faculty members made a very conscious decision not to engage the community, i.e. the kids in the inner city, as they looked for programming opportunities. And so literally that day I went home and drafted up a curriculum for a STEM camp, and took it to my pastor, and he said to me, how much money do you need? And I'm like, oh, give me a half an hour. And that was 4 years ago. And so we've actually had this STEM camp every year, including this year, and we were able to pivot because of COVID. Everybody's starting to hate that word, but it really is about being agile and lean enough to be able to change. So what we did was just really incorporated COVID procedures into what we did and brought in more online instruction. People that look like us did their presentations from afar, and it worked.
So beautiful. So I love it when we can be innovative and creative in the same space. So this question is for both of you ladies, and either one of you can take it first. So what do you feel in your experience had allowed you to make that pivot? Because not everybody can do that, right? So what do you think were the tools that you had that were like, okay, Simone, you said, you know, I did this for a year. You saw that this coming, so you began to create those tools. So how has your experience in education prepared you to help learners and their parents in these challenging times?
So I think about my own experiences as an engineer in a predominantly white college, being told the things that they tell Black folk around not being able to make it. You really won't fit, those kinds of things. And no, I knew that persistence to my dreams and goals was what was going to help me persevere. And so for young people, it has become really important for me to have them have those experiences that they need early on that build their confidence and allow them to see people that look like them doing things that they might want to do in the future. You know, this year we had a young lady who deals with neuroscience come in and talk to them about neuroscience. We've had yoga since day one. We've had chess since day one. All taught by African-American folk. This year, we also added a whole robotics piece, and we taught the kids how to program the robots. They had coding this year for the first time, and the coding actually helped them to be able to program these Lego robots later in the summer. So they need to have positive experiences that are rigorous, but playful, so that they build confidence and boost their self-esteem and their belief that they can do whatever it is that they put their minds to.
Excellent. Same question for you.
Sure. So for about 4 years now, I've been working in the public education space as an interventionist. And so that means that I intervene on students who are 6 months to 2.5 years behind in grade level standards. And so with that, there's a psychology involved with a student that has that type of gap in their learning. And so I think what has equipped me with supporting students, families, and communities is recognizing what I call the psychology of the gap, and then targeting that first before we start with the academics. And that is because we're in such a chaotic environment. I want to ensure that parents are taking a hard look at their students' social and emotional wellness before they start to put the pressure on the academics, because in interventions, what we know is that things like trauma are what create gaps. A lot of people believe it's ability, but a lot of times it's trauma. And so we need to guide our children through this kind of traumatic space that we're all experiencing, kind of like what Maria was speaking about earlier, and then figure out how, once we help them deal with that, we can move on and help them grow academically.
Excellent. So the next question I have for you ladies is, the scholars are predicting that, especially in our urban communities, that children are going to lose a year to maybe even a year and a half because of COVID-19. So what are your thoughts on that, and how can we help? How can we help? Because no one planned this, right? So what's your opinion on that? And what do you think, how can we take on this challenge together?
So I think that they may even be underestimating that gap. When I look at summer learning loss for urban kids, for African American and Hispanic kids, we know that over the 3-month summer, they lose up to a half a year in reading, and sometimes almost a full year in math. So when you look at that and it accumulates over the years, they become 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years behind their peers who've had enriching experiences over the summer. So when I look at and what we're doing now, we've extended what our STEM program is into the fall. And so we actually are a site for virtual learning support. So young people come to us and we work with them on an individual basis, and when the time permits, collective basis, to make sure that they're not falling behind. And it's a real challenge to see how students are at so many different levels, how teachers are teaching so many different ways. It's just really interesting. We work with kids from kindergarten through 12th grade. We have a kindergartner, we have a 12th grader, and it's a challenge every day.
What are you thinking, Gia? I can see you're shaking your head as well.
Yeah, so definitely agree with Simone that we may be underestimating what that gap may be. Definitely students are already coming in with gaps because of the summer slide. Then we're talking about kids who hadn't had necessarily really good formal instruction since March, just because everybody's been working diligently to try to build something in a quick turnaround. And so for me, what I suggest is that parents get deeply involved with communities like the one that you've built here. We are going to have to lean in really hard on one another. I suggest that parents, form groups and do things for each other to support one another. Maybe one mom or dad makes lunch. Maybe one other one does check-ins and make sure that everybody's getting their homework done. So we have to find our strengths within our communities and lean on each other and be willing to share yourself as a resource, because we're going to need each other right through here to kind of support teachers, educators, and ourselves, and making sure that our students are not getting lost in the gap.
Right. So the other thing that I'm also seeing is, parents are working from home for the first time. So there's all these other imbalances, and then the tech gap, right? So you both work in, Simone, you're an engineer, you're tech savvy, and also Dr. Paige, you're working to fill these gaps. So let's talk about some of the ways, yes, supporting and starting groups, but what if you don't have anything? Like, what are some of the ways that, besides this, are we as a community going to? I'm just going to say what I've been thinking. It's almost like we're going to have to do what was talked about in the video, is sue the education system, because this is not working for us.
Well, some parents have already mobilized to sue the local school district here in Charlotte for some of those very reasons. And so one of the things that I encourage parents to do is, now is the time to communicate heavily with your teachers, your administrators. Also, make sure that you're taking part. If your child is a part of a public education system, make sure that you are opening those emails, answering these surveys, because part of what we are trying to do in public education is answer so many different needs of so many different populations. And so if they don't hear your voice, then they can't, the old adage, the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the oil. And so we as a community, the Black community, are going to have to get really loud, collectively loud, and make sure that our voice is heard. Show up at these virtual board meetings that they're having. Know what is, what's on the docket for them to be talking about, what is coming up. So part of it is going to be some diligence by us to make sure that we are knowledgeable and aware about what's really going on, and we are inserting our voices. Then there are people like us. We have inserted ourselves within these systems, and so we have to continue to press harder from inside, making sure that we are advocating. That's pretty much my goal on a daily basis, is to be a voice where I see that we are absent at the table. And so I'm just here making the noise. And so that's what we're going to have to do.
Right. I agree 100%. So the last question I have for you, because you work with kids with special needs, and I was reading how you work with them and you get them from 2 and 3 years behind. So that requires a special skill set with the IEPs. We call them, I don't know what they call it in your, is it the same thing? So the independent education plans. So what are some of the special, what should we be doing? Because I know a lot of parents who have IEPs, or actually everyone should have one, by the way. It should be a standard across the board, right? So what are some of the tools that we can use to help those parents in this, especially with virtual learning?
Sure. So what I want parents with students with IEPs, and I am a parent of a student who had an IEP as well, and it's not always easy. In fact, it's never easy. I'm just going to be honest. It's rarely easy to get your students' needs met, right? So you're going to take that IEP and you're going to go through it page by page. And you are going to write down you're going to note every accommodation that your student has been, that has been laid out in that IEP. And I want parents to get on the phone or make a Zoom meeting or whatever you need to do to sit face to face, and let's just go down one by one and see how we are meeting that accommodation in this new environment. A lot of that may have the tendency to slip through the cracks, because like right now, we just need to get on the internet and make sure that we're logged into the classroom. But I want those parents with students with IEPs to really sit down with that IEP. If you do not have a copy, do not be afraid. Contact your school counselor or whoever has helped you put that IEP together and ask them to send you a new copy. It's as simple as an email these days. And just go through that IEP. And then as you are working with your students, if things are coming up, make note of them. And again, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Get back on the phone if you have to. And also, if your student has an IEP, a lot of parents don't know that you're entitled to have an advocate or someone to help you navigate that. So we're here on the East Coast. There are organizations right here. We have in Charlotte, we have something called the Exceptional Children's Association, and they will work with parents on making sure that their student is getting whatever they need from their IEP. Ask the schools about whatever external resources they have gathered. These school districts have been working diligently to build these banks of resources, be it food or counseling or those STEM activities that we're talking about. So there are things there that you could easily miss. So just make sure that you are asking, communicating. If you need an advocate, find out who the advocacy organization is in your local area, and don't be afraid to reach out. It's intimidating, it's scary, but it can be done.
So I do have a question in regard to that, especially for a student that is distance learning but needs that connection with the teacher.
Sure.
So I'm just thinking in COVID, this is just me thinking as a mother,
Sure.
Can they ask for, hey, that money that you're not using, I want my child to be, maybe there's a camp or something like a one-on-one, a lot of these pods are opening up. I want those resources. Can they allocate those resources to help those students?
So that gets very tricky.
Have you seen that done?
It gets very tricky. And those things require like a serious effort. So for example, like if the school is not able to meet your student's need, there are clauses, again, it depends on what state you're in, but some of them are federal, that says that the district may need to pay for your student to go to a particular school, right? But all of those things are very labor intensive. They may involve the law, involving litigation and things like that. And so I guess best advice again is check with that local organization that's going to support a parent in the kind of the legal ease of, and I know that they are here. I wish I knew where they were all over the country, but they are located all over the place. You can find an advocate to help you, but it is not an easy process. It's just not. It would be very simple to say, hey, listen, you're not paying for this aid. So how about let's take that money, and like you said, they have this going on over here, but it's not always that simple.
Okay.
So
right. So seek legal
I
advice.
I wish I had like a finite answer, but it's really not. It's pretty complex. Unfortunately, it should not be as complex
It
as
shouldn't be. Yeah.
it should not be.
We're going to bring Simone back on. I think we lost it. Had a little tech challenge. There she is.
I'm back.
Hello. So Simone, I want to ask you about these community non-negotiables.
Okay.
Can you share those with us? Because it's really important that we have this resource.
So absolutely. So one of the groups that I have been working with is, we title ourselves Reimagining Education. And we took this on in COVID, recognizing that as horrible and awful as C is, there are some wonderful opportunities for us as educators and as parents of young people who have been disenfranchised by the system. So in Reimagine Education, we have a couple of non-negotiables. First of all, we have some community expectations. And one of them is that there will be clear, consistent, and frequent and convenient communication with parents. Secondly, that classroom lesson content will be reflective of the history and culture of people of color every week. Not during Black History Month only, but every week. We want to make independent learning the goal, so that our lessons should be developed so that learning continues past the actual lesson, kind of in a framework of lifelong learning and more deep, intense learning. And we also have that we should have community access to museums, to the zoo. Our informal science entities have some of them, really phenomenal STEM-based and other programming that should be made available. And many of them are doing it, and they're doing it for free. So it's tapping into those resources and embedding them in what you teach your young people. But the non-negotiables are that scholars have the tools needed for quality instruction, remote or face-to-face, specifically devices, Wi-Fi, and strict accountability with school schedules. Teacher accountability structures, parent and community partner accountability for student attendance, mandatory professional development for new teaching platforms for everybody, not just teachers and administrators, but parents and students as well. Students with special needs are given priority consideration for instruction, including decisions regarding face-to-face instruction or virtual. Districts will make published statement of commitment to racial equity, including racial equity in the goals, mission, and objectives, and being held accountable to their commitment by the public. Students of color, this is for, students of color will not be penalized for not meeting white behavior standards for expression and navigation, especially during a time of increased depression and anxiety for everyone. Culturally relevant and trauma-informed strategies will be utilized for the express purpose of harm reduction and the avoidance of re-traumatization. And lastly, state and district testing should be severely minimized for the school year 2021. Students should be able to begin the year, avoid test stress and the deficit impression implied by the pre-assessments focus on quality instruction over academic attrition. So this is just a group that we came up
that
with.
Is a mouthful.
It is, but it's important. Each and every one of them
thank you.
is important for the health and integrity of our people, our young people. We can't let them take a maximum cut. We have got to do everything we can to minimize the impact of COVID.
Agreed, 100%. So we're going to share that resource on our Got School page. We'll also share it in our Facebook page. We're going to share that out. You guys did a beautiful presentation of that. It's a nice infographic that parents can share that resource. And as well as your website, I was looking at the information. Are you going to start, Dr. Paige, are you going to have like a place for us to link in and connect with you?
Sure. Find me on LinkedIn, always at Gia Paige. Everything for me is under development at this moment. My website is definitely there, and that you can access from LinkedIn. Find me there. Definitely, I'm a resource. I love connecting people to resources. That's kind of what I do also in the human, that's the human social services part of what I do. So I definitely keep a huge dossier of local and community resources. So it is okay to DM me. I'm never, that's never a bad thing. Please send me a message. And even if I'm not in your region, I will definitely do some research and point you in the right direction of where you should go.
Awesome. And Maria, any final thoughts from you?
This has been a tremendous amount of just fabulous information. I was over here taking notes and all kinds of things, and it made me think about the need for an underground railroad and that kind of thinking so that we can connect from state to state, so that if I need to know what's going on here or what's a similar program like Dr. Paige is talking about, then I can find that. So we really need to think about building an online resiliency hub where we can all tap in and say, okay, this is where you need to go. These are the step-by-steps for an IEP, especially in this virtual distance learning. This is the step when you want to reallocate those funds so that your child can get what they need. So this really got my wheels a turning because we really need to know what's going on, not just in our local neck of the woods, but throughout the nation, so that we can continue to help one another. So the Underground Railroad is just really what stuck out in my mind as far as the education is concerned. So we can lean in on one another, because I've just learned a great deal just by listening to these two brilliant Black women, right? And just are working in their genius. And it's a beautiful thing. And there's so many more of us out there. And we really need to connect. We really need to connect and really rely on each other, because we truly are all that we have.
Absolutely. Simone, any final thoughts from you? Oh, you're on mute.
Just keep this going. This has been phenomenal. So helpful.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to also say, ladies, that the idea of connecting the dots, that's why we did this the way we did it. Maria and I have been talking, and we all know these geniuses. And so everybody's asking all these questions. So I love the idea, Maria. Yes, we need a place. And maybe there are, and let me just say this, there are people doing things. I just haven't seen this united effort for, especially right now, for education in our country to make some demands that we've never made before. So let's start thinking about that, right, ladies?
Hey,
And so,
Adria, I'm sorry, love. Am I able to ask a question? I'd love to ask a question.
Absolutely, yes, yes, that's what, yes.
So my question is this: I've been seeing a lot on social media where it's like the parent versus the teacher, right? Where the parents are like, "Hey, I'm in this house, and they're gonna do what they want to do because this is my house," and and then the teacher's like, "Please stop letting your baby eat in class on on the camera. It's very distracting." So it seems like we have these two, instead of us working together and trying to figure it all out, it's like the us versus them kind of mentality. Would either one of you want to speak to that and kind of shed some light?
Yeah, that's a tough one right there, because we are at home and getting parents into the mindset that you have to make this learning space. Like, this is not their job, right? And so for me, I enjoy creating a welcoming and engaging and warm learning space, but a parent is not necessarily in that frame of mind. I've got to work, I'm trying to figure out this new life, and now suddenly I'm responsible for my child's education. And I feel like that instantly they have this defense mechanism built up because this is my house and I have to be here and I want it how I want. And so what I say to friends, family, parent, community is, one, please remember that once we started this virtual thing, we invited a system into our home, right? And so I want to just remind us of that and just remember that the system is in your home. So that I feel like I want to keep saying it. I want to run it on a ticker. We're seeing stories of it, popping up and coming back to really negatively impact us, and it will, like many other things, impact us the worst. Parents and teachers are now a team, and so we have to look at it that way. And so I would just love to say, parents, don't resist. We're working really hard and doing the best that we can. Most of us do want the best for your student. This is a great time for teachers to learn the great art of communication. I've seen a lot of trouble begin just because of lack of really good communication. And so on the educator side, we have to also practice a lot of empathy and compassion and place ourselves in the shoes of the parent. And some people say, well, I'm a teacher and I'm at home and I've got my kids too. And that is true, but this is our profession. And it may not be mom and dad's profession, and they're overwhelmed and they're afraid for what is going to happen to their child. And so we have to just keep all of those things in mind, deal with each other like we're human beings. This is more than a job. This is our babies. These are our future. They need a lot of love and a lot of nurturing right now. And if they can't even see mom and the teacher like working, or dad and the teacher like working together, then we're really setting them up for more failure. So I would love to just send that message out to parents and educators. We don't want to set these babies up for failure. We have to be a team. We have to see each other as human beings and treat each other well and with some love and compassion and humanity.
It really is about the human element and building relationships. And those teachers who are skilled enough to be able to do that in this environment will fare better. There are children. We were the first teachers. We don't know everything, but we need to make sure that this doesn't negatively impact our children. And whatever it is that we need to do to help build community, to show respect, whatever that looks like in each setting, that's what we need to do. And so it's really forcing parents to be in a different place than many have ever had to be. Um, they didn't
Yeah,
come
I
to the
agree.
school, so why should they, be a part of this? And now it's forcing them to. And in our district, they've really said we're going to hold parents accountable for attendance. And we will, at worst case scenario, we will go after you for truancy. So, I mean, that to me, it sounds a little harsh, but on the other end, what are we doing to ensure that our kids are learning? Learning is, what is it? Compensatory education still exists. There's still a responsibility for parents to have their children educated. And if we're not doing what we need to do to make that happen, then we ought to be liable, because we really can't afford to continue to slide and make backslides in the education of our kids.
I agree. And what I love about this whole thing is that the interconnections, last week the other thing we learned from one of our speakers is this co-creation of the education with the teachers. And so the more we speak to this co-creation, and I had an incident this week and I was like, oh no, she didn't. And I was like, okay, so I had to wait a minute, did you mean to say this to my daughter? Because normally she would have just said whatever she said and I might not have ever heard it, but she had to type it in. And I was like, So I addressed it, here's what I want to let you know about my daughter. This is why she did it the way she did it. And then she's like, oh, well, I was hoping for X, Y, and Z. But because she didn't communicate that in the lesson plan, you can't hold her accountable for something that you didn't communicate. So I had to step back and what you said, Dr. Paige, was I had to step back and think, okay, she doesn't know her. This is a co-creation moment. Let me help her help us. And I had to kind of ease into the email, but it is a challenging time. And as a parent who comes from a background of very well educated people, I know I'm having a challenging time, and I can't imagine people that don't have that backbone. So this is a space for you. We thank you for being here. Any other closing comments or anything else anyone wants to say before we close out? Any other questions, Maria?
No, I just think that it's beautiful that this is a platform that's being used for what we need, because we really do need this. And I think it was right when Ms. Simone was talking about the interaction or the involvement in parents. Having been a teacher and being a homeschooler now, I've been on both sides of the coins. And what I have realized being in that system is that the parents, like Dr. Paige said earlier, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. If you've been non-compliant or just have not been a major part of your child's education, then the teachers, they look at that and and some of them are empathetic enough to overcompensate for it, and then some of them don't. They do the exact opposite. So I really think this is an opportunity. As much havoc as COVID has wreaked and everything else that's going on right now with the fires and everything else and the crazy weather in Denver and across America, now is really the time for us to shine. Now is really time for us to show up and step up into our humanness. So I think that we really could take this opportunity to improve what we really are capable of. And I just hope that we all take a great opportunity that we have been given, even though it looks really, really awful some days, it really does. We still have an opportunity for that silver lining. So we just got to hold fast to each other and really pull each other up when we need it, and really be respectful of one another and what we're all going through.
Thank you for that, Maria. So you've been listening to Got School, and parents, this is the time for us to be held accountable and us to take the reins back a little bit and really think about what we want for our children's future like never before. We all understand that education has been a broken squeaky wheel for a long time, but guess what? COVID made a way for us to re-engage and reimagine the future of education for our children and the generations to come. We thank you for tuning into Got School. Yes, thank you. And I want to say again, thank you. I'm going to keep calling you Dr. Paige because one of these days we're going to celebrate that with you. And thank you, Simone Bess, for coming and tuning in and sharing your birth of knowledge as an engineer and a thought leader in education. And as always, Sister Maria, thank you for being our pro and giving us the tips on a weekly basis to keep us all grounded in this moment. Thank you for tuning in to Got School. We'll see you next time. Same bat channel, same bat time. Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Dismissed from drama school with a note that read, "Wasting her time. She's too shy to put her best foot forward." Turned down by the Decca recording company who said, "We don't like their sound and guitar music is on the way out." A failed soldier, farmer, and real estate agent. At 38 years old, he went to work for his father as a handyman. Cut from the high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room, and cried. A teacher told him he was too stupid to learn anything, and he should go into a field where he might succeed by virtue of his pleasant personality. Fired from a newspaper because he lacked imagination and had no original ideas. His fiancée died, he failed in business twice, he had a nervous breakdown, and he was defeated in 8 elections. If you've never failed, you've never lived.